Their whole theme in the media as well has been unity. You know, Kamala coming into this race, and, you know, Biden was historically unpopular with a lot of cohorts of the electorate, but like she's bringing the unity of this thing. Well, I'm sort of thinking it might unravel this week.
This is their constituency. Who they are ultimately, like I think you said it earlier today. You know, when you go to a Republican National Convention, you got Democrats protesting outside.
Yeah.
When you go to a Democratic National Convention, you got Democrats protesting outside.
Yeah, they're protesting themselves.
That's what's going
That's
on.
the wildest thing about their coalition is it's so disparate and they're fighting so much that they show up to their own convention to heckle each other. It's wild.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. It is good to be back here on the Variety Program. And a familiar face with Wolf, who spent what sounds like a vacation, but not really a vacation. I did have a vacation, although with two small children. Rest and relaxation is not exactly top of the ticket, but I feel good. I'm ready for the stretch run here, fellas. How we doing?
I mean, it is a stretch run. We're like, what, 80 days? Less than 80 days from the election? We're right there. We're in the thick of things.
Gotta be in the thick of things. I mean, look.
Holmes, can I interrupt you for a second? Because it feels like when you go on vacation.
This is a setup.
When you go on vacation to a place where you get some sun, you come back and you're a little bit closer to our POC than Smug.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, this guy's been out there getting a tan. This guy got some sun.
Yeah. And he brought back a mustache.
Yeah, it's a modest mustache.
I like it.
I don't intend to shave it anytime soon, but I end up inevitably having to do some kind of a professional presentation where I will have to get rid of it, but I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. My wife doesn't like it. My kids do not like it.
No?
I think you should keep it. I think you should go full Tom Selleck picket fences. You got to keep it through Election Day.
Through Election Day. Quite a commitment. Can you imagine that? Just straight facing? I don't know. I mean, some people can do it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not totally equipped to do it, but I'll try. I'll do my best. Josh Holmes, comfortably smug. Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, and a full cast and crew coming at you this Tuesday, where we will preview, we got the DNC convention. A lot of stuff going on. It has been a, shall we say, a very positive week for Democrats, followed by 4 previous positive weeks, in that they have every establishment in America pulling oars for them.
Pretty much. I mean, when you have a candidate who can't be seen on camera talking extemporaneously, who can't do interviews, it's left to the media to be like, well, we're the campaign arm now. So, like, they've been doing their best to try to make it like, listen, forget the Kamala that you've known for years, the one who couldn't win a Democrat primary in 2020, the one who's got all these ridiculous positions that we don't want to talk about. This is about joy.
Yeah, it is about joy. And their whole theme in the media as well has been unity. You know, Kamala coming into this race, and, you know, Biden was historically unpopular with a lot of cohorts of the electorate, but like she's bringing the unity of this thing. Well, I'm sort of thinking it might unravel this week in Chicago at the DNC.
Well, I think that's right, in large part because, look, we've got plenty of flaws in the Republican Party. We show them on a pretty frequent basis, and they're exacerbated by the media coverage and focusing only on what hurts Republicans and what helps Democrats. But every time you get to a point where you have no hope, you look across the aisle and they provide you with some. Mm-hmm. And I feel like no matter how smoothly the media wants to portray this DNC convention, they're going to show their underwear at some point.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I mean, they opened the thing with land acknowledgments. It was like, okay.
That was right at the top of their
Right at
thing.
the top.
Yeah.
They can't help it because this is them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This is their constituency. Who they are ultimately, like I think you said it earlier today. You know, when you go to a Republican National Convention, you got Democrats protesting outside.
Yeah.
When you go to a Democratic National Convention, you got Democrats protesting outside.
Yeah, they're protesting themselves.
That's what's going
That's
on
the
there.
wildest thing about their coalition is it's so disparate and they're fighting so much that they show up to their own convention to heckle each other. It's wild.
But then they also have to figure out how to give that voice.
Yeah.
I thought the best acknowledgement of that was Josh Shapiro, shortlist, down to two, for a potential vice presidential nominee in a state they absolutely must win, who I think on paper and just by obvious acknowledgement is the most talented young Democrat who happens to come from a state that they have to win in order to get to 270. They took Walz instead of him, which in any normal environment with a normal political party you would say is an insane decision. Mm-hmm. But as we've suggested for the better part of a year, there's a Hamas constituency.
That's right. And when they snubbed Josh Shapiro for the VP choice, I thought, okay, surely they're going to make him the keynote speaker in that Barack Obama slot.
Yep.
Do you know who the keynote speaker in the Obama slot is this cycle? It's Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
No kidding.
They snubbed
They
Shapiro
snubbed him again. They snubbed him again. This is a governor who has better rhetorical skills in the setting of a convention than anybody else in their party, unquestionably. And yet they've chosen to put Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary,
a bureaucrat.
This past weekend, I saw in the news that during a bus tour in Pennsylvania, Kamala didn't even have him on the bus. Like, that constituency is so strong. She's like, I can't even be seen.
She doesn't want him.
Don't want to lose the anti-Semites.
They keep pretending as though that this isn't real. They're like, oh, well, Trump's crazy. This is real. We've been telling you for a year it's real, and it is real. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just don't know. If you're a Jewish Democrat who's looking up at this ticket and being like, yeah, no, I feel very hopeful, you're nuts. Partisanship is a hell of a drug. They mean exactly what they say. What it looks like is exactly, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Mm-hmm. That's what they are. I mean, they just don't want any sort of pushback on this bizarre Hamas constituency that they've got, so they buried
there was
Shapiro.
They buried Shapiro. There was a story that came out Monday morning. I don't know if you guys saw this, and I can't remember the publication, but it was about how John Fetterman will not attend the convention. And it goes through this vignette about how Fetterman talks to the reporter and gives his reasoning for why he's not attending the convention, and follows up with his press secretary called the reporter back after the interview and made it clear that they did not agree with Fetterman's view on Israel and Palestine.
The damnedest thing I've ever seen.
Undercut their principle. So the next generation underneath of Democrat staffers, we're not talking about the people in our generation of Democrats. We're talking about the 20-somethings.
Your generation of Democrats are okay. You know, you Democrats.
The JFK.
We even let you sit here. But the younger Democrats.
The Harry Trumans.
The younger Democrats, they just don't like Jews.
They really don't. So along that score, as this thing gets kicked off, you've seen a couple of different things. If we could light up clip one, Spaghetts.
Y'all can do better than that. Mike,
oh, man. What is...
150,000 people are dead.
If you're listening, you can't see the video. This person has a mask on as if it's COVID.
Free Palestine. Wow.
So this is opening night of the convention, the welcoming ceremony.
Unity.
About unity, about fanfare for the Democratic
Party. Supposed to be a party.
And you have this androgynous woman. I think it was a woman because the octave of the voice, but I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
I mean, and you certainly don't know how they identify these days, fellas. I didn't ask the pronouns. They weren't provided, so I don't know. None of us know. It's all a big mystery. But this person rushes the stage and demands that the crowd listen to a diatribe on the plight of Gaza. And they were greeted immediately by the free Palestine deal. So you get a little sense of what the undergirdings of the Democratic Party. This is the unity event.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's all joy and unity. That's all it is.
It's just a wild thing to open up with. But like clip 2 really puts a fine point on it to me, to how fragile these coalitions actually are. Can we play that right now, Spaghetts? Okay, this is a large protest in Chicago, Free Palestine. It's sponsored by the Feminists and LGBTQ for Palestine. And they're marching in front of a bunch of things, but in the backdrop there, Trump Tower in Chicago.
I love that. It's so great.
Because, in Palestine historically, the LGBTQ plus community and feminists have been very welcome. They've got a very strong voice.
Well, they're welcome to be thrown off a roof.
Pretty much.
I know that.
But look, we've done this ad nauseum. They literally would be executed in Gaza.
And that's the thing is the left essentially has no belief but control. That's how they have all these groups who completely disagree with each other. But they're told that, listen, what we are going to do is rob from the other tribe, give you the riches, and let you run amok. We won't put you people in jail if you riot, if you throw Molotovs, if you commit crimes, if you enter this country illegally. We don't care. That's fine.
They connect all these non sequiturs as part of this, intersectionality in their ethos.
Yes.
Like I saw a clip of somebody outside at the DNC talking about how reproductive rights is the same as Palestinian liberation. And it's like, those things aren't this. Not everything's the same thing. That doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
Because for them, it's all about the cause of making America
power.
A communist country.
Yeah,
it's all power. They don't care about anything individually.
So we're going to be going through a lot of this in this particular show. We're going to talk about the DNC, whether it's going to get ugly just by virtue of protests and whatnot. It looks like it's well on its way. We're going to talk about the economic policy, to the extent that you can even call it that Kamala rolled out at the end of last week. After, by the way, great shows last week.
Thank you.
Mary Catherine, fellas, really holding it down.
Yeah, we
Great
tried our
job.
best.
But since then, she's rolled out an economic policy that is like the most laughable thing you've ever seen in your entire life. We're going to talk about that. But I think where it intersects with what we were just talking about is, none of this stuff makes sense. You have to be the world's biggest fucking idiot to think that LGBTQ is a welcome advocate for Hamas. You have to be an idiot. Just in the basic charter of both organizations, they're at conflict to the point where one wants to kill you and the other doesn't seem to recognize that. And then you look at the economic policies, and they're like basic economy 101. If you were to take, I don't know, just a math class, if the last math class you took was called math, you would understand that what she's talking about for our economy doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. It's all vibes.
Yeah.
It's all let me speak to something to try to get out from underneath a disastrous economic record, which increasingly in poll numbers looks like there are a segment of Americans, predominantly women, who think that somehow what Harris is proposing is distinct and different from what Joe Biden was doing. And they may be right in one component, in that it's way further left than the furthest reaches of what we thought Biden could do.
Yeah, it's Biden's policy on steroids. When she's openly now, it's price controls. We have now reached the point where part of the Democrat platform is price controls. Bernie in his lifetime never imagined he could move the Overton window this far, that we're at price controls. Folks, you may have learned about them in history class from every communist country right before their economy failed.
Yeah.
Goes with price controls.
Price controls have literally never worked in the history of capitalism, since capitalism has been tried on planet Earth. I will say, though, silver lining to all this, been a great week for Milton Friedman. I think I've seen like 10 Milton Friedman clips on television over the past 72 hours.
Yeah.
Those great interviews that he did with Phil Donahue way back in the day.
God rest his soul,
God
Phil
rest his soul.
Donahue.
Yeah, because we used to have that sort of discourse on during the daytime in this country before we became a garbage culture and people were interested in being educated on things. And Milton Friedman talks about it better than anybody.
Totally. I mean, let me wrap up the intro with just saying, look, if your goal is to do what the Biden administration did during their first 2 years, which is basically to ship money to preferred constituencies, open up the printing presses, create massive inflationary periods in American history, but then for businesses to be capped on what they charge.
Yeah.
The only thing that results in that is businesses not being able to remain open and service the needs of a community, and therefore the government then needs to step in and actually produce the means of production.
That's the thing is, so,
That's it.
For folks.
Like, you don't have to be a fucking, like, Yale graduate to
just
figure this out.
Read 30 Seconds of History of South America.
Yeah.
Like, they've all tried this,
This
and
is
they've all
it.
failed.
Yeah.
Like the way that we discussed last week about how like Obamacare, we were told, oh, it's going to bring down prices. It was actually the first step to Kamala's current plan of getting rid of all private health insurance. That's the same way. They know that eventually price controls lead to government control of groceries. They know because that's what they want. They want collectivism. They want socialism. They know this is the first step to it.
Ask the Soviet Union how that worked out. We've got some variety for you today, too. There's a Tesla hook in here about a warlord.
Huh.
That is interesting and fun.
Yeah, I think Smug's going to like that one.
I think he's going to like that, too. So we'll check all of that out. We'll get to all of it right after this.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
All right, so let's dive into this first day and what's going on in the DNC. And it turns out it's not just sort of staged stuff that you had at the RNC where they put people in a pen and they're doing the Free Palestine thing and all of that. When you're protesting your own, there's a little bit more fervor, as we saw in 1968, particularly in Chicago. They got some extra energy to them here. Let's play clip 3, if you wouldn't mind, Spaghettis. Look at that guy.
Yeah, for the folks who are listening and not subscribed, first off, you should subscribe to the YouTube so you could see this 85-pound man threatening police officers.
Don't forget the lime beard.
Yeah.
That lime beard was first class.
So, like, a breeze would knock this guy off his feet, and he's in front of cops being like, Piggy, I'm going to bring the war home. I'm quite sure those officers are worried about that guy.
Right.
Do you imagine how much self-restraint it would take not to just grab that megaphone that's in your ear and just
Seriously.
give it a rap back in that guy's face?
I mean, the reason that guy exists is because there's police keeping him safe. 100%.
Yeah, he looks like a barista at a vegan bakery, and he acts like he's Muhammad Atta. Like he's gonna bring the war home. Really, you, dude,
You're the guy.
You're the guy.
You're the guy.
Yeah.
Where do you find these people? Like, I'd be interested in these comments. Like, to interact. We're gonna have a question for you later, but interact. Like, have you dealt with these people? Like, I haven't really dealt with these.
I feel like they hide among us.
Do they?
They hide among us.
How can you hide something like that?
I don't know. It
He's
seems to
probably
be
got
there's
the-
a lot of people in public schools who want to mutilate children's genitalia, and we only found out about that about a year ago.
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Yeah.
I think they're hiding among us.
Ashbrook knows a bunch of these folks. They're your journal buddies.
Yeah, what about your journal buddies?
Will bring the war home. I mean, that's like a domestic terror threat.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Saying it to a cop is pretty bold.
Yeah, it's a domestic terror.
Well, that's the thing is because they know they're safe.
Yeah, and plus Chicago's already more dangerous than Iraq, so they're pretty much used to that sort of thing.
But they also know that they're, let's just be honest here, they're not the ones who will bring the war. The fighting-aged men from Uzbekistan and China and Tajikistan who have walked across our border and have been released into our society by the Biden and Harris administration, they're the ones who are going to bring the war. And that guy's going to continue holding the bull.
Doesn't it make you wonder? And the reason I ask, like, where do you find these people is, doesn't it make you wonder whether or not they've ever experienced any sort of negativity in their own lives?
That's the thing is, and you see this so frequently because I remember in New York, it was like Bill de Blasio's kids who were like radical Marxist revolutionaries, right? And then you see, what's Kamala's husband's, the first, second gentleman's kid who's like also a radical revolutionary who, and then you saw Walz's kid during the riots being like, my dad's not going to send in a National Guard, keep going. These people have not faced any hardship. They don't know what it's like to actually have to do something with your life so that, everything's always provided for them.
Right.
These are people who have a PhD in, radical Marxist theory that they're demanding that American taxpayers pay
It
for.
is. It's what we had an episode we talked about, I think 6 months ago. We were talking about, all of these Gen Z people on TikTok reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America.
Yeah.
And I think what we properly diagnosed then and now is like the people who are the most radical on the left, it's all luxury beliefs. None of these
100%.
people have like actually worked a hard day in their lives or suffered real hardship. But they just become more radical because it's the only thing that provides them with an identity outside of their comfortable life.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Dude,
certainly
that's
none of these people have been to Gaza, right? I mean, if you ever got me to chant, "We'll bring the war home," you'd be threatening my children,
Yeah.
and that's it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like to most normal people, that's it. Like your protection of your family, your community, your way of like that. That is the only scenario where you rip the Band-Aid off on rhetoric like that. Whereas these guys, I mean, look, they're mostly college age, I guess, and they're just sort of like marching out with line beards and
it's the
skinny
same reason
jeans.
you saw this across college campuses when there were the riots that were going on a few months ago. It's because what's happened is that party has made their identity from when Obama was like, I'm a community organizer, where the most noble thing to do on the left is you're a rabble rouser, right? They have decoupled the American dream from being like, let's make this country a better place. Let's try to buy a house. Let's try to start a family. Let's try to make something of ourselves, into America is irredeemable. And the only thing you should do is go out and throw Molotov cocktails.
You can't be happy.
That's it. They don't want to be happy.
Yeah,
And that's why you see like this spike in like mental disorders among the youth, is because they're sitting on TikTok all day being told that you're a racist, you're a horrible person. The only way to redeem yourself is to go become a foot soldier for the left.
And it's just going to get worse here. I think this is just an appetizer, the convention, because just wait till all these college kids go back to class this fall.
Oh yeah.
You know, and they're back on campus organizing, where they like try to hunt down Jewish students and take over quads and buildings and things like that.
UCLA just had that ruling like you can't legally stop Jewish kids from attending class. So like, darn.
Darn.
It's just
They've had a busy
outrageous.
summer, like filing papers
Yeah.
in their dad's law firm.
Yeah.
And now they're like out to, really make a difference.
Yeah.
No question about it. Let's play graphic one here, Spaghettis, because this is a good setup to.
Oh,
It's just just your average storefront in Chicago. What they've got is boarded up, Chicago board up services. So it turns out that there are services.
It's a business model. I saw this and I was just like, holy cow. Like, this is a sign of the times. On there, it says Chicago
board up
Boarding
your-
Services.com. We'll board up your place. You go to the website and you place an order and they'll board it up. It's become a business.
Yeah.
Of like,
you
we
used
got another Democrat gathering.
you used to have to call a certain Italian for those sort of protection services. Now they've made it a legitimate business.
So they have 6 major protests planned during the DNC in Chicago, according to Politico. Harris, despite being part of the Biden administration, was seen as some as being more sympathetic to the pro-Palestinian cause. Maybe that's because they put her in charge of being pro-Palestinian. There are at least 6 major protests during the DNC, the biggest planned for the first day, Monday. So by the time you're hearing this, we'll see what has made of all of that. But there are tens of thousands that are expected to march just blocks from the United Center, where Harris and Walz will give their acceptance speeches. The family-friendly march. I love that they have to have one of those. Yeah, of course you do, because when the rest of them, you have your genitalia out.
Yeah,
you
not
you
very
don't want
family
your-
friendly.
Yeah, we don't know what they mean by family friendly. They could mean that. They could.
God knows
mean,
that could, yeah.
There's plenty.
They're gonna have a dude wearing a dog mask reading a book to your kid.
Could be like the Paris Olympic opening ceremonies for crying out loud. It's organized by a pro-Palestinian umbrella coalition that includes groups devoted to a variety of causes. Organizers are busing in from Michigan, Minnesota, Indiana, Wisconsin, and activists are also coming in from New York and California, too. Now pro-Palestinian protesters are planning to come out in full force in Chicago. Don't fall for the wolf in sheep's clothing, said Adam Thayer, who is a longtime progressive organizer and a leader of a protest scheduled for Sunday. So you saw that was basically
Wild.
that.
I mean, that's not a bad message. It's like conservatives, this dude, don't fall for wolf in sheep's clothing. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what Kamala is. She's
Yeah,
essentially a Trojan horse of being like, it's all about joy, guys. I'm not going to talk about my policies.
Means a little different thing than us to us.
He's
but-
like, not far enough.
So it seems like the only thing they're missing is the weather underground.
yeah.
Oh, no, well, Obama's showing up. They might be there too.
Meanwhile, and look, when we did the Milwaukee convention, it was striking to me, and I know to all of you, just how upbeat and friendly everyone is, not only within
It
the
was
convention,
awesome.
but within the bars and restaurants that you went to, everybody you met on the streets, like everybody was just sort of in a good mood, very accommodating, like the
Red,
nicest.
white, and blue everywhere. People are like, I love this country. Let's have a good time.
It was just the nicest, like you couldn't have had a better experience as someone who, you didn't know where to get around town. Somebody would just immediately tell you, oh, you got to go down here, go to there. Like everything was great. Meanwhile, House members, Democratic House members, according to Axios, are in fear of the DNC. House Democrats attending the DNC that next week are being advised by congressional security officials not to book hotel rooms in their own name.
Good God.
I mean, it's just wild. I don't know if you guys noticed how many cops have been deployed from all over the country. There are all these terrorists and these protesters from all over the country who are going there. There are cops from all over the country who have gone to Chicago to try to keep the peace at the DNC. And I think the irony should not be lost on us that it's actually cops who keep us safe. It's cops who are keeping the peace. And in this case, Democrats are relying on cops to try to keep the peace. In reality, in the city of Chicago, where the murder rate is off the charts, they refuse to let cops keep the peace.
That's the thing is I feel bad for them. I feel bad for those cops so much because there can be someone running amok. The same thing that happened in New York City. I keep bringing up the Molotov things because the girl who was throwing Molotovs at cop cars, she got let go.
Yeah.
They gave a blanket pardon to all the rioters.
Well, and it should be a reminder.
Are you
that
saying there's two systems of justice?
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Is
Tom
that-
Cotton was right. Equal protection of the law.
all the same Democrats who let cities burn across this country in 2020, when they're showing up to Chicago for their convention, they're going to make sure it's well staffed
Yep.
with police. All these people who want to defund the police.
Yeah.
If somebody lit as much as a fire in a barrel outside of the United Center, they'd have a cop there.
Yeah.
But they didn't give a shit about your neighborhood. They didn't give a shit
That's
about the
thing.
small businesses.
exactly.
Their party
Exactly,
matters.
Duncan.
Their party matters. Your small business, your home doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Tim Walz's wife opened the window to smell the smoke from the fires, being like, "Oh, that's wonderful." How sick of a person are you to think something like that when someone's business is going up in smoke?
Yeah.
I just laughed because they had Capitol Police actually providing like guidance for House Democrats on how you handle this situation, and it was like don't engage, whatever you do, don't engage. The guidance said the law enforcement will try to confine the protesters to the designated areas.
Well, of course.
You got to keep them in the designated areas. It's outside the inner circle, so don't worry about that if you're in the inner circle. But they were also briefed on the convention security last week and said that they had a thorough security plan that included hotels and everything that's outside of the security perimeter. Like we just did Milwaukee, where it was nothing but like Democratic rabble rousing. Everybody was just kind of doing their thing. It didn't feel like anybody needed a briefing,
No.
right? And these guys, it's like, I don't know, they're part of my constituency. How do I not deal with them? These are my voters.
I
for
need to
crying
speak
out
to
loud.
them. I need to tell them that I'm with them. That just pretend we're going to pretend for the next 90 days before the election, and then after the election's over, we're going to give you everything you want.
But it has an effect. It has an effect. Like, I don't know what Kamala Harris's core belief is on virtually anything other than she's off the left-hand side of the map, but certainly on these protesters. I know that Joe Biden, his core belief, based on, I don't know, roughly 100 million years of congressional service, he didn't think a lot of them at all right up until he became president and was in an election cycle. And then they started trying to triangulate their foreign policy to try to accommodate them because they felt like it was a necessary component of their own reelection. The person they put in charge of all of that was Kamala Harris. Reason to believe that this is not only effective, but they're going to incorporate some of this stuff.
Well, they're absolutely going to incorporate it. I mean, think about what Joe Biden ran on in 2020, that he was the moderate. Old Joe's going to bring normal back to government. And then he started his first day in office. They opened the border to anybody who wanted to come across.
Day one.
Imagine what Kamala Harris, who is now being covered by the media, saying like, "Oh, she is not a leftist. She has changed her views." As soon as she gets in office, she is going to be so much further to the left than Joe Biden could even imagine.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even that, but what she's trying to do, and you've seen it with immigration, the economy, all kinds of different things. She's trying to pretend like she's not a member of the administration, despite being number 2.
She's like, I'm going to bring prices down. Well, so when are you going to start? The 4 years you were there, you had a chance. Like, well, why should we listen to any of this bullshit?
Which is so hilarious, considering a story that you found yesterday.
Yeah.
In that the DNC left in their references to Biden's reelection in the Kamala Party platform.
Yeah, the Democratic Party publishes, the official platform of the party ahead of the convention. And it's like 200, 300 pages, and Smug mentioned it at the top, but it begins with a land acknowledgement. Hilarious. Hilarious. But there are mentions throughout of a second Biden administration.
So this is the whole crux of Kamala's 17th reboot since she's been on the national stage, is that she's been sort of an innocent bystander in all the negativity that has gone on to this country on behalf of the Biden administration. And yet, despite all of that effort to try to undo being a border czar or casting a deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, or all those sort of things, they craft an entire party platform, which is basically a statement of values under a nominee that they're going to try to pursue in a term if they're elected. They leave in Biden's second
And they
term.
I mean, all you had to do was a little Control F Biden. That's
How
all
about
you
just
had to
Biden?
do. That's
I mean,
all you
that's
had to do.
essentially what they did to the presidency. It's like, you at least do it to this document.
Just delete it. You just did it. We fixed the glitch. But it's a magic trick, though, right? Like, what she's trying to do is make this a choice election, not a referendum on the last 4 years.
That's right.
And so, like, she's doing this thing where it's like the hot dog meme. She's like, we're all trying to figure out who did this. And she's like, I'm going to take down prices on day one like she wasn't there for the last 4 years. And it's even more awkward because they're going to have, Biden speaking on Monday night at the convention.
Right.
I think that's why they threw him on Monday night. So they're like, okay, let's just get this old man out of the way.
Let's clear the gate. So can we put up graphic 2? The second one's my absolute favorite. In President Biden's second term, he will continue selecting judges who will protect fundamental rights and who represent diversity of the American experience. All right, so the Biden's second term thing, notwithstanding. Like, that's hilarious. What they're talking about is abortion and race-based selection of justices.
Yeah.
That's not, these are all Democratic code words. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with the upholding of the rule of law, the securing of basic American rights under our Constitution, under our Bill of Rights. None of that. Like, that's not important to them. What's important to them is that in Biden's second term, known as a Kamala Harris term, they're going to be selecting judges, fundamental rights who represent the diversity of the American experience.
I mean, I didn't see the word Constitution written in there once. Interesting.
It's interesting.
They don't
right?
have a lot of reverence for that document, unfortunately.
But you know what this platform is, and you know what Kamala is going to do. She is going to drive our economy into the dirt. You think prices are high now. They're going to be even higher. And so they started this document with a land acknowledgement, but they ended it with a full frontal assault on the American economy. Yep. And you think anybody on reservations is going to have a good life when the economy goes to the shitter under Kamala Harris? She's basically like, hey, we acknowledge your land. Here are some malaria blankets. I mean, she is literally going to ruin our economy, and nobody feels it worse than the people who are struggling the most right now.
Yeah, she's like, I got this great idea of how to slow this crippling inflation. We'll spend more money. That'll do it.
It's incredible.
Hey, I got a great idea to make houses more affordable. I'm going to give everyone $25,000 to buy a house, and that certainly won't jack up every house price $25,000.
It's just a fundamental misunderstanding. We're going to get into all of this in great detail, so I want to save some of it. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how things work. And they don't even try to pretend. They straight face it. And like what blows my mind is that there are 50% of the American people who are like,
Yes.
that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That makes total. I just want to like. It drives me so crazy. It drives me so crazy to think that there are people dumb enough on this planet who have a reasonable education. I understand there are different opinions about Donald Trump. I understand that, like, you may be like pro-choice, whatever. You like abortion. I understand that there are differences in a whole range of issues. But when we're dealing with the economy, don't we have enough evidence here?
Yeah. Like, didn't you live through the last 4 years?
Didn't you see what happened?
Yeah.
Like how, and even if you didn't see, if you know just basic supply and demand economics, when you just put flush cash in and then you cap prices, and so like the demand and the supply are off and people can't run businesses, that like the economy's not going to work.
But I think that's the thing, is that's why they have this kind of coalition that they've built, is because under the banner of saying that like Donald Trump will end democracy, right? Or, if you want a free Palestine, you have to vote for Kamala. Or if you want to bring down prices, vote for Kamala. How does this all work? Is under one banner, they just make the simple idea of Trump bad, save democracy. That's why they made the whole tagline, because it's like you can have your fundamental issue be X, but you have to vote that way or you're evil. That's all the separations become. You're either good or bad. It doesn't matter individual beliefs, doesn't matter how this makes zero economic sense. They just say you have to vote for this or you're bad.
Before we get into the funny shit that they're doing, it also strikes me that what these guys are doing, they can only hide for so long. Like, conventions at some point are about providing airtime for the constituencies that you would like to court. Like, for example, on Monday of the Republican National Convention, when they had the Teamsters guy, I found that fucking abhorrent. Like, I thought that sucked. That was my least favorite moment in the entire campaign. I thought that guy blew goats. And like every single thing that he was talking about, I was like, that is the worst thing of all time.
Yeah.
But they're trying to court an organized labor that is fundamentally more culturally conservative than the leaders of organized labor would like everyone to believe. And so they want to speak to that.
Yeah, big tent.
They want to big tent it and open. So I understand that's not for me. I'm not in danger of voting Democrat, right? So I get it. But it was not my favorite thing. What's going to happen in this convention that they didn't have to do in 2020 because they didn't have a convention is that they're going to have to speak to some of this shit. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to give some. So, like, everybody was thinking this is going to be a perfectly choreographed thing. It will be, and the media will make it so. But there will be moments that if you watch what's happening in Chicago, you'll be like, holy shit, that's insane.
Next up, Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean?
I actually think he's dead now, but you know.
But like that kind of
rhetoric,
I
mean, like it's going to be somebody.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
We'll definitely do heavy pronouns. We'll definitely do, teachers unions. We'll definitely do all the things that they've been like.
I mean, well, who knows? I mean, Waltz had that cleric speak numerous times that he said, "I love listening to this guy who's just straight up like Hitler actually did nothing wrong."
Yeah,
but I mean,
like we are joking,
might
but
bring
it's
him
not,
on stage.
we're joking, but it's not far off.
But to your point, if you look at the headliners for the Dem convention all week long, it is the rich and powerful. It is Joe Biden, it's Hillary Clinton, it's Mayor Pete Buttigieg, it's the top bureaucrats. At the Republican convention, it was a Gold Star parent. It was a small business owner. It was a family member of a hostage in Gaza. Mm-hmm. There are regular people speaking at our convention, and that is a contrast that I feel like tells the entire story.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's right. So another story, Duncan, I think you might have flagged this. Free vasectomies, an inflatable IUD. Abortion rights advocates hit the DNC. This is according to the New York Times.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood is having one of its mobile, buses pull up there to give vasectomies and abortions for free to attendees at the convention. And what I think is like particularly hilarious about this is like, what does it say about the vision of the Democratic Party that a dude like comes to that convention and his first thought is, I really shouldn't procreate.
I want to be sterile.
You know what? Yeah. I'm good. I'm done.
I'll tell you what.
That's hope.
Yeah.
That's dreams for the future.
What surprises me, fellas, is that there are any Democrats left to be castrated.
Yeah.
I mean, how did they find a line of people?
And that's the other thing. So, like, I saw a lot of people were dunking on this video of like these buses of like young Democrats going to the convention.
Yeah.
And I was like, none of these dudes are in danger of procreating to begin with. You don't even need the surgery.
You don't need the surgery, dog.
But it is like, apparently they're all full up, lying around the block, guys getting vasectomies.
I mean, according to the New York Times, there's already a waiting list.
Yeah.
For all of this.
I guess there's one upside. I mean, we can be sure these guys aren't going to.
It really does put. It really does put to bed
until they drill a tranny who's switched her up, right? I mean, which is like the only danger.
It's really something like the derangement and the like message of joy, but then coupled with like what I've been saying of what they've done to the younger generation of making them be like, well, climate change is going to end the world in 18 months.
Right.
So there's no point in going forward. There's no point in having kids. It's like,
and that's exactly my
the death cult.
My point, Smug, is like these are the people like a month ago calling JD Vance weird. You know, because he's pro-family and thinks that, like, family-first policy is an important thing for a government to do.
Yeah, but that's weird, Michael.
That's weird.
It's weird.
But showing up to give people abortions at your national convention and snipping your balls so you can never have a child, that isn't anti-family. That isn't
I couldn't hold it together.
I mean, it's like, I don't know. I'm. What else can be said?
It's so bizarre. It's just so bizarre.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of like, whenever like Christians want one thing, there's some public celebration around Christmas or something, and like there's always that Church of Satan that is like just kind of trolling it by like putting up a statue or something.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like to me. It just feels sick.
Except like, look, there's always contrarians in society, and there are people who just like their thing is to try to get a rise out of others, right? Like they show up at like a decorated veteran's funeral who was killed in combat and protest it.
Yeah,
and those are just like they're just bad people, right? The problem that we're looking at with the Democratic Party fundamentally is that you're dealing with people who do that on a much wider scale.
Yeah,
where it's not just about trying to get a rise out of people; they're actually that's what their viewpoint is.
Yeah, and I've talked to some Democrats about this because you'd be shocked, listener and viewer, but there actually are some sensible Democrats left in that party. They're very, very, very quiet now.
They don't talk
because the politics has changed. But, wasn't long ago in this country that, the saying was safe, legal, and rare. But the Democratic Party over the last 4 to 6 years has really taken a different approach, and that is like viewing things like this as a positive good. As a positive good. Like, vasectomy, to end climate change. Or like an abortion, shout your abortion. It's a very strange tactical decision the party has made, and I think it alienates a lot of people.
It is very odd, and I understand there are a lot of cultural and demographic differences across this country, but it is very hard for me to wrap my mind around a Democratic Party that is fundamentally divorced from the idea that if you work hard, if you build a family and community, that like good things come for, everything around you. And they just don't seem to believe in any of that.
They're a death cult now. They think climate change is going to end the world and there's no point going forward.
They just don't. And you're going to hear some of this. So listen carefully. This is my guidance to you guys. What you're going to see in the media is like, oh, here's Bill Clinton's like 3-sentence discussion that sort of like tries to fly above it and give you like hope and change. And Barack Obama does the same. And I mean, God, Hillary Clinton's going to speak. So, I mean, that's going to reel some of that.
Hopefully it's not campaign strategy in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Right?
Hopefully it is.
But they're not going to talk about the details at all. But then they're going to leave to the undercard working through all of these things. Listen. Listen to what they're saying. It is very literally what they mean. Mm-hmm. And that is what a second Biden term, otherwise known as Kamala Harris's term, would look like. It's just, it's ridiculous. So anyway, our question for you all, we've thought about this a lot. And one of the things that we've done in the Variety program is try to do everything we can do to try to provide you as much context and discussion in a fun way as we possibly can. But, we're in election season, so we've talked a lot about doing a third episode. We have day jobs.
Yeah, we have day jobs. We're helping campaigns, independent expenditure groups, all sorts of things ahead of November. It also means like we've got a lot of insight to a lot of things that I think would be helpful for our listeners and viewers to hear that we can't always fit into 2 episodes a week.
Yeah.
But the one thing that the audience asks for is more.
Yeah.
Every single person is texting in and they're saying, we want more.
That's the thing is I give and I give and I give, and there's never enough, is it?
Smug. Truly.
Hardest working man in show business. No question about it. So our question for you all, the viewer and listener, is how do you feel about that? If we get like thousands of comments on this, we may do it.
Like a third episode every week.
We may do it. And some of the ideas of what that would look like, I find it hard to believe we do the exact same show. 3 days, so it might be more specific to what's happening in campaigns. It might be something different. Send us your ideas. If you get on YouTube, first of all, like and subscribe, because that's how you
opine.
Right.
That's how you opine. But once you're on there, send us your ideas on how you want to handle all of that. And if there's enough...
Yeah.
Maybe we do it.
Yeah, we could do a lot of different things. We could do polling. We could do episodes where we're just more drunk. You tell us what you think you'd like to see in a third, bonus episode every week.
I think that's right. So we will be back with your questions from last week, which is how can Republicans counter the media? And we'll be back right after this.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal, reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org.
Coming back with the YouTube comments from last week. Again, great job, fellas.
Thank you.
Really, really well worked through in a very tumultuous week here in American politics. And we asked the question, how can Republicans counter the media, which is quite obviously the most ridiculous thing that we've seen over the last few weeks. I think we start with The Voice on this.
Yeah, okay. And remember, like and subscribe if you wish to opine. This first one comes from Christine, and her answer to the question, how can Republicans counter the media, is since Kamala and her team refuse to outline her policies, then the Trump team has the opportunity to define Kamala as a radical leftist, while also tying her to the failures of this current administration. He should do more interviews and some town halls, and his team must train him to stay on message. He rambles a lot, and the average American doesn't have time for it. Be clear and specific about his agenda and compare it to Kamala's failures. That's Christine.
Well said, Christine. I think we hear a lot of people. That's representative of a lot of the comments that we got on that.
Yeah, and Trump's doing a swing through a bunch of the battleground states here, trying to bracket the DNC with like his own, rallies and things like that. On Monday he was in Pennsylvania and New York, and I think he's going through North Carolina and a lot of the other states. And so, hitting all of those messages, particularly on the economy and what she would do, I think is very important. Christine, right on the money.
Dunks, what else we got?
This is from George McKenzie. How can Republicans counter the media? Policy, policy, policy. Set up short videos showing Kamala saying stupid policy things. Dozens come to mind from the recent proposal to have federal price controls, to her flippant statement that she had neither been to the border or Europe. That is one of my favorites. That is one of my favorites. Yeah. Respond with informational and or opinion on why the idea is bad, will, or has hurt America. Keep it tight and don't exaggerate. Post them on YouTube, TikTok, show them during downtime at rallies. And do stop exaggerating. It turns the discussion from the policy to a quibble about the inaccuracy of the exaggeration. I wish I really could get access to the campaign.
You know what's so funny is, like, you've said this a lot, Smug, but our listeners are the smartest people in
They
politics.
truly are, dude. They really are.
They really are, because every one of these things was, there was sort of an amalgamation of all these that we picked things that are representative, but like that advice.
Yeah.
It's dead on.
Yeah,
It's dead on.
because in a lot of advertising, like the one thing that ruins an otherwise great ad sometimes is credibility.
Yeah.
And people have to believe that whoever is in the ad is credible and that the facts presented therein are credible. And when you do exaggerate, sometimes you lose the ability to really reach the voter.
Yep. Well done. Smug, what else we got?
This comes from Jesse Ortegon, and he writes, as you guys are apt to point out, Republicans always get adversarial media and are forced to defend themselves and do not get the chance to share their vision with Americans the way Democrats do. It's time for Republicans to return the favor. When a reporter asks a Republican a question, don't take the bait and reject the premise. Better yet, turn it back on the hack journalists who haven't questioned Harris in months and ask them. That's it.
Yeah.
Don't take the bait.
Yeah.
To your point, smartest audience in
We
politics.
still have.
100%.
Do we still have those shirts in the store?
I think so.
The don't take the bait stuff.
I don't know. I can't remember.
You've been sewing.
I have not been selling. I need a weekend too.
Maybe
My
just
poor carpal tunnel.
listen, old man. Maybe just set the sewing aside and start ironing on. Don't take the bait.
I would never- I would never-
We
Use an iron.
want quality product.
I would never do that. Our audience deserves the best.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. If you're going to invest in the variety program, you expect the best. No question about that.
We're not cutting corners here.
All right, so the one thing you're going to get in the variety program here, and we wanted to make this a very special segment, is to break down actually what it is that you've heard of Kamala's economic policy. Because here's the thing. She went for 6 weeks without answering a single question. And the whole motif was just to try to distance herself from a very unpopular sitting incumbent president, of which she sits literally at his right hand and executes everything. Executes based on going out and making the case for it, executes based on owning things like border, executes on being the tie-breaking vote on his economic policy in the United States Senate. Like, she's done absolutely everything there is to do. And she's been afforded the right by the media up to this point to basically be like, no, she's her own thing. She's her own thing. So it was notable at the end of last week when she came out with some economic policies, things that she would like to do as president of the United States. Holy cats, fellas. Let's play let's play clip 4 to kick things off here.
A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Yeah.
So this is a tweet that was sent out. Was it Ega Worth? Something like that. Mm-hmm. It was a tweet that was sent out that they obviously clipped it. But that's the point, is that she is out there sort of making the case that most Americans feel and pretending like she had nothing to do with it, as if it's the
hot dog meme.
It's the hot dog meme.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure out who did this.
Right.
You know, like she wasn't there for the last 4 years.
She's pretending as though this economic policy isn't her economic policy. So then she comes out and, you know, look, the press, as bad as they are, it does build up a little bit, and then you have to release a little bit of tension to the balloon, even if you're a Democrat. And so she came out with some economic proposals. She's going to use the federal government to combat price gouging on groceries.
And reminder, that's in an industry where the margin is about 1.4%. So we're talking about like your grocery store, the difference that they make between it's 1.4%. It's the most. This is why a lot of people don't get into the grocery business, is because the difference in the cost that the grocery store pays for their goods and what they sell them at is an average of 1.4%.
Yeah, and
that's why they're always worried about like shrinkage. Like if too much stuff gets stolen in a grocery store, it's done for because their margin is 1.4%.
But Democrats think that's where food comes from. They think food just comes from the grocery store.
Yeah. Right. Or it's there or Uber Eats, right?
It's like electricity coming from the plug in the wall.
Right, exactly. They have no idea that groceries actually come from places like Wisconsin, where she was, and she's rolling out these policies, and there are people who are dairy farmers and who are like, what are you talking about? And we can barely make ends meet.
And that's a great example, because when you do things like for your constituents as a get out the vote operation, when you do student loan forgiveness, it's not forgiveness. You're handing off their loans to farmers, to hardworking Americans, to folks who decided on their own that they weren't going to go to college, they weren't going to take out a loan, but they're going to pay for the loans for this Democrat get out the vote operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just think logically about what she's talking about. She knows you're upset that you're spending 3 to 4 times what it is that you've spent on daily groceries. She knows you're upset about that. It shows up in the polling everywhere. Her answer is to blame somebody other than themselves. Mm-hmm. Right?
It's like they're thinking, and they're really trying to get away with this, is they're like, so the day of the Biden-Harris inauguration, every business owner in America has a secret meeting where they're like, gentlemen, we're going to hike prices by 50% now.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
Other than Buttigieg with the bread price.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's like, price controls, huh? I think I could help out here.
He's like, hold on. I might have a roll here.
I've got some experience.
I might have a roll. But, I mean, like, this is the cynical stupidity. Where, like we've said a lot of times, partisanship is a hell of a drug. It happens on both sides. But Democrats are absolutely insane with this shit. Where you've got a problem. You know the obvious situation of inflation, and yet their solution to the problem is to blame the only purveyor that is attempting to provide the service in order to do it. There is no economist in the fucking world who would tell you that, like, the grocery store is responsible for a hike in prices.
Well, Krugman can because he's a hack. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's economic.
Is he even an economist? Like, I don't even.
These days, he's not an actual economist. He's just a writer for the New York Times. So his job is to be a spokesperson for the Democratic Party. Every single actual credible economist, and I'm telling you, like, this isn't like complicated economics here. This was literally in the first semester, the first class of economics, where you learn about how price controls absolutely don't work at all. That's like day 2. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about how price controls just don't work. Like this proposal of $25,000, the government's going to give $25,000 to first-time home buyers as down payment assistance. Do you not realize that? Let's say you send everyone to a shopping mall, right? And at the door, you hand out a $100 bill to everyone. You don't think every store knows we're just raise the price by $100 because there's $100 free at the door? What do you think is going to happen to home prices? All of a sudden, they go up by $25,000.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Well,
and that's just your tax dollars.
Imagine
your
the
money
savings.
that you paid just being lit on fire.
I mean, it's just economic illiteracy. You know,
That's what it is.
and they have to know, right? Like they have to know the inflation is driven by all the excess government spending that's happened since the end of COVID and the beginning of the Biden administration. She was cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Reduction Act that put in trillions of dollars into the economy that didn't need to be stimulated in the first place and drove up all of these prices that we're dealing with today. So, of course, spending more government money is not going to be the solution to an inflation crisis. And then, like, the other thing, Smug, you know, you're talking about the grocery stores. It's the whole fucking supply chain. Like, it's not just the CPI. It's not just that index. You look at the producers index, too. And those things track. Yes. Right? Like if the consumer price index was way, way, way higher than this producer index, you could be like, okay, maybe there's a gouge. There's a gouge going on. But what invariably happens in these situations where governments try to do price controls is you end up, ever give those people the $100, you end up with shortages. Yep. You end up with bread lines. Like we literally have seen this in South America for the last 30 years. Like look at the Soviet Union. Like read a fucking history book. It just gets me so angry.
It gets me so angry. She wants to just like quadruple ultimately and go to kids-based newborn child tax credits.
Look, I'm in favor of all of this now because everyone at the DNC is getting vasectomies and abortions. So
you think it's a wealth transfer?
I think it's a lot of money going to red states.
But literally the incentive structure there is just you have kids you can't afford rather than a stable unit of tax relief based on a family that is now incurring new expenses as a result of a child, right? It was there to try to stabilize the idea of families in the United States. That when you're raising taxes on absolutely everything as Democrats do, that it's impossible to financially make it make sense to have children. And so ultimately, Republicans came up with the idea of a child tax credit in order to offset what it is the Democrats were doing in your day-to-day lives with sales taxes at the local level, income taxes at the federal level, all mortgage, everything. They did it, and it sort of worked. But now their whole thing is like, well, let's just try to up that to the point where if you have 17 children, you have, if you have 10 kids, you're going to get $30,000.
I actually agree with Duncan. So if it's a tax credit, whereas you have to be paying an income tax to have it deducted from, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I think a severe problem is there's not enough people paying into the tax system. So I don't think we want to have more benefits going to that because our deficit's already busted off of paying entitlements. So if this is not set up as an entitlement program, if it's set up as a tax credit, because if you lower taxes, that's fine. Force the government to lower their spending.
You guys give me a lot of grief for my journo buddies. Let me read you a headline that was printed as an opinion column in the Washington Post over the weekend. Quote, when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it's hard to exaggerate how bad Kamala Harris's price gouging proposal actually is. That was printed in the Washington Post.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
But it's also proof of one more thing is like, because I know J.D. Vance has been on expanding this child tax credit. It's like, you're never going to out-Democrat the Democrats.
No.
Like, they're always going to want more. They don't give a shit about our national debt or our deficit or spending us all into oblivion. They're always going to put more. Spend.
I just think it changes the incentive structure.
Well,
right?
yeah, sure.
I mean, basically what you were trying to do with the child tax credit is incentivize people to do the American dream thing, to build a family, to live in a community, to be able to contribute to that community, to have a little less financial pressure to have that family. And like what this is now is like an incentive to just pump kids into homes that probably like if $3,600 does the trick, and that's an actual incentive to have yet another child, like that's something that you should probably take.
I guess I'm radicalized in the sense of like, if there's any tax cut available, I support it. If my tax bill can in any way, shape, or form be cut it. The government has run amok with their spending. They think they
Right.
can have all my money.
Right.
If there's any way possible, I don't care if they're like, if you wear a blue shirt, you get a tax cut. I support that.
I think maybe we can offset it by seizing the endowments of all of those Ivy League
There we
schools
go.
where they let anti-Semites run around.
Well,
How do I vote for Duncan?
I'm going to play her idea on how to pay for all this in a second. But I'll just say, you cannot tell a person with a good idea in a community anywhere in this country that you're going to tax that good idea at 40% of everything that comes in.
Yeah.
And then turn around and be like, but I'm going to give you $3,600
Yeah.
That's the truth.
on a child tax credit.
That's the
It's
truth.
outrageous.
That's
You
it
just
right there.
you literally cannot do. It's not the way that you incentivize community. Like people, American people, for generation after since our inception, have wanted to make their own communities a better place. People are in this country are genuinely, or at least historically, have been good people who like to take care of one another. When you start putting price tags on things like children, it changes the incentive structure entirely. Where you're not opening up that business, you're just going, you're working for the man, and then you're having another kid, so you get another $3,600 off your ticket, and like, it's just a bad economic policy. It's just really fucking bad economic policy, and these guys, it's illiteracy, soup to nuts. She, as you guys covered last week, then just stole, just straight up theft of Donald Trump's idea of tax on tips.
Yeah, no tax on tips. She
When-
invented it now.
And here's the other thing.
And they
is-
put it in fact checks as Harris and Trump's idea.
Yeah.
Harris and Trump's idea.
And what they don't hold her to account is, again, so a lot of folks, our audience probably knows this, but most Americans I'd venture don't, is that one of the most important duties of vice president is if there's a tie in the Senate, the vice president is the deciding vote. Kamala Harris voted to sick more IRS agents on waiters, on people in the service
so
industry.
That's a great point.
The
Smug.
funniest thing, just like globally here in this election, is like Kamala Harris gets more credit for Donald Trump's good ideas than she has to take blame for Biden's bad ideas.
Yeah.
Dude, that's it.
a
Wow.
great
Yeah.
point.
You know?
Well said.
Dude, really well said. So listen to how she defends all this. In what we think here in the Variety program is the first time she's asked a substantive question in the entirety of her campaign on clip 5.
You unveiled your economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
So that is just full insanity from Kamala Harris. And when she talks about return on investment, the first thing that comes to my mind is that $6,000 probably pays for 3 months of groceries under her regime. And the grocery prices that will go up and the prices on everything else that will go up because of her price controls and because of her ludicrous left-wing agenda will lead to something that we don't even recognize. And it reminded me of a headline in the New York Post that also ran over the weekend. Spaghetti, can you put that up?
Graphic 4, please.
Right there on the front of the New York Post. Communism with a K.
I love it.
So what they're highlighting is the fact that our proposals would cost $1.7 trillion over 10 years. And again,
Guess who pays for
No,
it?
it's not going to cost anything because there's the return on investment.
well, it's the return.
It's a return on nothing costs anything because of the return on investment.
So what I had a hard time with was if you just isolate the child tax credit piece, because she mentioned that twice and then circularly rounded back to what we're doing on the tax piece. And the only tax piece that she was talking about was the child tax credit. She mentioned it twice in two different places, but pretended like they were separate and different things. Is what she's saying that if you reduce the tax burden on working families, that revenue would increase to the federal government because their taxes would pay for more spending in things like property taxes? I think she said that.
Her first thing was like, and we can spend more of their money. Like,
Yeah.
that's the end of all of this is, I will have more of your money to spend.
But it's your classic supply side argument the
Right.
Republicans have had from the very beginning. The Democrats, and you ask her today, she will say with a straight face that the Trump tax cuts were deficit spending.
And that's the
She will
difference.
say that.
Is-
Despite the fact the revenues were higher, she will say that.
Is the central belief of Republican Party when it comes to fiscal conservatism, when it comes to tax policy, is money is best spent in the hands of those who earn them, right? And her is, well, then we can just take that money and then
Right.
spend it on other things. And then, what really pissed me off about that clip is then she circles off to, and that increases, we'll get more property tax money. And Doug's nodding. I just got my property tax bill, bro. There's no joy in that.
Right.
So when they're like, yeah, we can tax them some more, we'll get more tax money.
It is very funny that they're like, well, they can't afford to buy a house without our government money, but certainly we can tax the shit out of them once they buy it. You know?
Dude, they've fostered an environment where 70% of American people don't pay net taxes.
Yeah.
This is their
That's the thing.
This is their policy. 70% of the American public doesn't pay a net tax dollar.
You're just not thinking about the return on investment. I'm gonna try that, dude. I'm gonna like go home. I'm gonna get like a new set of golf clubs, and my wife's gonna be like, "What the hell?" And I'll be like, "Honey, you just
Return
don't
on investment.
understand the return on investment here."
Well, it's kind of like when she goes to the store and it's like it's 20% off. You don't understand the savings.
Think of the savings. Oh, so it didn't cost 80% because of the savings. Think of all the money you saved.
So as you mentioned earlier, Smug, economists, left-leaning economists, were like jumping ugly on this thing. Axios had a report that was mainstream left-leaning economic pundits, including Jason Furman, Ernie Tajici of the Washington Post editorial board, Josh Barro, Catherine Rampel, and all have criticized her proposals. Of course, because they're like written in crayon.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you,
written
because
in
like
crayon.
she might be your friend, Ashbrook. Catherine Rampel is just she is a communist, and if a communist is like, wait a minute, this is a bit too much.
Whoa.
Like, that is shocking.
It should get your attention.
I mean, it should get your attention. The fact of the matter is that these people don't know what they're doing.
Nope.
Like, you can say what you will about Kamala Harris and, like, is she new to this ticket? Which I think that that's a significant component to what you see in polling right now, why there's a Democratic resurgence, is that 60% of the American people, whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning, did not want a rematch of 2020. And so the first, as you always say, the first ticket that changes that up is going to have a residual benefit of that. That's what Democrats did here. They switched it up, provided you a new face, and there's an education process that needs to take place. But what she has been afforded by the mainstream media up to this point is nothing short of shocking. Is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
because it is insanity. The numbers do not add up, and every time it has been tried, it leads to worse and worse conditions. And these people are dead serious about
But
putting
the
this in.
only time you get the media to criticize Kamala Harris is when she tells us who she is.
Yeah.
That's what this is. That's what this economic proposal is.
And that's why she's been
And
not talking to them.
And the media is like, no, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
You just shut the fuck up.
they are.
Just shut the fuck up for the next 80 days. We'll just pretend you're new. We'll pretend you're not a lunatic.
Right.
Just shut the fuck up. And so all these liberals coming out and criticizing this economic proposal are just that. They're not actually mad about it. They just don't want her to say it, because saying it makes it harder for her to get elected.
Dude, you're right.
Great point.
Duncan's right.
Oh.
Duncan's right.
it's such a sad state of affairs. But this is vintage Kamala, where she ended her week last week. Why don't we play clip 6? This is a little advice to a football team.
And by doing that,
and all that that requires, which is the hard work, the practice, working as a team, knowing that you will be undefeated even if you don't win every game. No circumstance or event or moment will defeat your spirit.
You know the coach came out immediately after, he's like, disregard that bullshit. We're not here to lose games, folks.
It's like the word games that Livs play. You're undefeated despite the fact that you lose.
Yeah.
Because in spirit,
you can identify as winning.
I mean,
identify as winning.
participation trophies are one thing, but now we're talking about winning games we lose. I mean,
So I think you're going to get a little bit of this. It's going to be very rose-colored from the media perspective. I just don't think it's going to be, the worst that Republicans have thought is we're going to get another 2 weeks of a residual bounce that we've had over the last 5 with Kamala Harris. I don't think you can hide that.
Can't.
I don't think you can hide that. And I don't think you can hide who the Democratic Party is completely. So I think this week there's an awful lot of people who are like, oh, something's new. I'm for something new. And they're going to have a look at it. And it's like, oh, man, that feels a lot like the old. Right? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss,
But
only
worse.
crazier.
Yeah.
Only crazier. All right, a little bit of variety. You guys ready for this?
Always.
So a Chechen warlord, according to the New York Post, has obtained a Cybertruck. So, recall Elon with Tesla. They made these Cybertrucks. They look crazy.
And I remember when he first unveiled it, he was like, this thing's like unbreakable. And he hit the window and it broke. And he's like, okay, we're going back to the drawing board. And he was like, we're going to make this thing like bulletproof. And then they did an actual presentation where they had a guy with a handgun shoot the damn thing. And it was bulletproof.
So they got a Chechen warlord. Can we put up this graphic? This is graphic 5. So this is a dude who's mounted. What is that, a 50 cal? What has he got on top of that?
looks like a 50 cal, and he's also draped in ammunition. It's like a bandolier.
Is sick. It's a good shot. If you want to look cool, that kind of looks cool.
But he also looks like he's hanging out at like a Marriott marquee.
Yeah, no, it looks like a...
He's in the local office park with his Cybertruck and machine
It is so funny, dude. He's got the Osama bin Laden beard, and he's wearing a hoodie, and it looks like he's going in there to deposit a check.
Yeah, it looks like he just walked out of the PNC Bank where he got the loan for the car.
So look, we've always talked about those trucks. They're pretty significant. Sounds like warlords.
Yeah, but I mean, like, how many charging stations are between, Chechnya and Kyiv? Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think he's gonna be able to get it into battle.
It's a tough supply chain. The Russians are not great at that.
Yeah.
Tough supply chain for that. All right. Finally, did you guys see the PGA or the situation with Trump's granddaughter?
Yeah, Kai?
Kai?
Committed to University of Miami.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. She accepted a scholarship to the University of Miami. We were hugely complimentary when we were in Milwaukee about her presentation in humanizing her grandfather.
One of the best.
And a big part of that was the time that she spent with Donald Trump playing golf.
And like we said, it was one of the best speakers, in my opinion, at the convention. Like when she told that story of like, I'd be in class and my grandfather, President Trump, shoots me a text asking about golf or talking about a golf game. And it's like, okay, I'm in class.
I'm in class.
But that is so cool, right?
Dude, so cool.
It's important for a lot of Americans to see that side of Trump of like, this is the dude who texts his grandkids talking about golf. Right?
I think
that's awesome.
I think, like, counterintuitively, everybody talks about all the great surrogates that the Trump campaign has and the people who believe beyond belief in Donald Trump. I think what she says about her grandfather is the most compelling case for Donald Trump there is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
dude,
really do.
100%.
Also, this is no Bronny James situation here.
She stripes.
She stripes.
Yeah.
I mean, she can whack the golf ball.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, she can learn from one of the best. Like, the dude is serious. When he was at that debate, when he told Buddy, he's like, I've seen your swing.
Yeah, no, he
Sucks.
knows.
He knows what he's
He
doing.
knows his golf.
Totally. All right, so listen, you got to like and subscribe. Get onto that YouTube, like and subscribe. Leave us a comment there. Leave us a comment on wherever you get podcasts, if that's where you're listening to. Remember, our question is, will we have another episode?
Should we go up to 3 a week?
Will we do 3 a week? If we see it enough,
and if you got some good ideas for us to work with.
if you got some good ideas, we may incorporate some of that. We're gonna get crazy. I only spilled one drink, and we're gonna get crazier as it goes along. Everything post Labor Day.
It's a sprint.
It's real.
It's a sprint to the finish line.
It could get very, very wild. So go and subscribe and like, and I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much to the Means. Remember, answer that question, subscribe to the YouTube, and hit like on this episode. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.